Oh, hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee here. Welcome to the Joe Chaffee Show on this Thursday, the 13th of June, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And as always, when you're watching this, remember that the radars and satellites are all dated. So if you're looking at this on a replay later on, be sure to check your local National Weather Service forecast office page for the latest information regarding severe weather, and you can find that by going to weather.gov. Change the shot around. Looks a lot better now. We got rid of that horrible light in the background. Looks a whole lot cleaner here. You can actually see the green screen in full view. It's a bit on an, we got the camera here is a bit on an angle, but one of my colleagues went to the trouble of setting this up today, and it really looks nice. So let's get going. We've got we actually have some severe weather going on with respect to what's happening in here in the Northeast. After you can't ask for a more miserable day on Long Island, where I live, in the spring, when you've got temperatures that barely make it back to 60, and it's 7 o'clock at night, and you're at the highs of the day now. But that's the world I live in. And in fact, we do have, because we had that one coastal system move up this morning with overrunning rains and heavy downpours, and that kind of played out on schedule. It also was evident that another situation where the short-term models simply don't have a good grasp of how precip is lining up, and they certainly aren't having a good grasp with showing the thunderstorms that are around this evening. SPC has put a marginal risk of severe weather into southern New Jersey, southern Pennsylvania, and northern Virginia, back into West Virginia. Of course, the western part of that now is probably done, but there are some very strong thunderstorms moving eastward out of Maryland into Delaware and into southern New Jersey, which we're going to take a look at in a moment. Also, just want to point out we have risk areas up in West Texas and eastern New Mexico, northward into eastern Colorado and western parts of Kansas, and a small portion of southwest Nebraska. Slight risk of severe weather on the southern flank of that, where we have a working severe thunderstorm watch. And we also have a marginal risk for severe thunderstorms in the northern half of Utah, on up into southeast Idaho, northeast Nevada, southwest Wyoming, and just touching the corner of northwestern Colorado. So a little bit of action. Also seeing some storms this evening down in Florida. That's part of the general thunderstorm activity. But one of my, an old colleague of mine, well, when I say old, let me rephrase that. A colleague of mine who I worked with many years ago, but not too many years ago, she took a great shot of a thunderstorm with lightning strikes hitting the Atlantic Ocean just off of Vero Beach. And I put that picture up on my Facebook page. So for those of you who are part of my Facebook weather page, take a look at that later. It's very impressive. One of the lightning bolts actually hits the water, and it creates quite the show. So let's take a look at the specifics. We're going to come back to some of these other maps a bit later on. But let's take a look at what's happening specifically at the moment with respect to the radars. And I'm going to start with the wide radar view first. I'm bring it up to the front of the screen here. And it's like watching a pinwheel or spokes on a bicycle rotating around. You have the deep upper trough that is in the eastern lakes and extending southward. And of course, you've got these spokes that are rotating around. And that has worked out into two lines of showers and storms, but actually the first line is just some showers, and then that goes back up into upstate New York. That really isn't doing very much. Then you've got the area that is producing, and then there's two separate areas of strong thunderstorms that are going on right now. This loop is back about a half hour old, and out to the west, where you get closer to the upper low, and on the other side of the cold front, you've got showers and some heavier downpours moving into parts of into northeastern Ohio, and that's sort of rotating southeastward. So you visibly can see the rotation here and what that deep upper trough, what it is creating. So we're going to jump to the Dover, Delaware radar, and we're seeing there were severe thunderstorm warnings and marine warnings up for northern parts of Chesapeake Bay a little while ago, and those have expired at this time, and now it just looks as if we have another marine warning that has just gone up for the northern part of Delaware Bay, between Delaware and southern New Jersey. But those thunderstorms there are coming into southwest Jersey now, and they're pushing to the northeast. I talked about the fact yesterday. I thought there might be a chance for some thunderstorm showers or a thunderstorm this evening when the cold front went through. But given what we experienced today, I was starting to have my doubts at first, and then I started to see the stuff fire up during the mid-afternoon. So that worked out. We'll see. My big question on this is seeing whether they hold together. Jumping up now to the Fort Dix radar out of Weather Service in Mount Holly, not seeing any severe thunderstorm warnings being put up yet in southern New Jersey, but you can see the bottom part of that particular area. It's kind of sliding to the east-northeast, and if it holds up, it might reach eastern New Jersey and New York City. Although I got to think it's going to come in, if it does make it, it'll be in a much weaker form. The first strand of showers there, that's weakening as it moves up through northern New Jersey. But this one's holding up rather well. And then I'm just going to go also to the central Pennsylvania radar. And we'll go to that State College. And that is CCX. Whoops. Yep, CCX. And hopefully that'll work. Okay. I think I took out a dot there. All right, let me try this again. There we go. Okay, there's your look out of State College. The storms that are near Williamsport, those look like now they have now weakened as they moved eastward. So that would definitely make sense. That's what I was thinking, that this would happen after 7 or 8 o'clock. That these showers and storms would weaken. So they may have already passed their peak intensity based on what we're seeing on the radars. And back to that wide view, I'll freshen this up a bit. And there you can see that pinwheeling motion. The rain from this morning is long gone now, because that's all the way up in eastern Maine and moving up into New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. And down in Florida, we have some showers and storms going on in central and south Florida. It looks fairly busy here. Some of the storms are a bit on the strong side, and you can see the action going on with some thunderstorms off in the coastal waters. There's more coming up out of the Gulf of Mexico and moving toward the northeast. And to the west, you've got these showers and storms. Now, this is all in that risk area, the slight risk and the marginal risk that extends further north, and the other marginal risk area back into Utah and Nevada and parts of Wyoming and Idaho, seeing some cells firing up in that particular region. So here's the surface map as of 21Z, which is 5 p.m. Eastern time. So that first low is now, at least it was analyzed at 5 o'clock, sitting right over Montauk. And then you have the cold front with the deep upper trough. So now you have this, there's actually a bit of a warm sector that is pushed up into Maryland. That's where you saw those severe thunderstorms. And so you're getting a little bit of forcing here of warmer and more humid air, temperatures in the upper 70s and dew points in the mid 60s in eastern Virginia down into North Carolina. So some of that warmer, more humid air trying to push up. It's fighting against the cool marine air that took over today with the first low. As I mentioned, temperatures did not get out of the 50s in some areas along the immediate coast. I'm going to bring up just doing a few things tonight on the fly. So let me go to, if you ever want to, I've mentioned this a few times, but there's this wonderful tool. I think it really is, it's very easy to set up. This is actually better than the EDD, the electronic digital display tool. It's a little easier to set up. But we have the actual surface observations. I'm going to throw the dew point on here, add a few others, add the counties, and then I'm just going to make it a little darker so that you guys can see this a bit better. We'll take this and we'll change that to imagery. I kind of like this look. So let me put the counties back on. There you go. Okay, so this is what's happening. Take a look at some of these, the temperatures. These are as of 7 p.m. I wanted the dew points up too. Hang on one second. We'll put those back on. I usually set these maps up ahead of time, and I didn't get an opportunity to do that tonight, so I appreciate everybody's patience with this. There we go. Now we got the dew points. Excuse me. Notice across Connecticut into Rhode Island and Massachusetts, the temperatures are all in the mid-50s and dew points in the upper 40s. I mean, the northeast wind just kicked in, and the temperatures went, and once the rain started, of course, those temperatures fell. It is mid-June. Temperatures on Long Island, for example, and in and around New York City, the average high this time of year is at 80 degrees, 80, 81. We should have gotten there, so we were many places some 20 degrees below average. Now, in South Jersey today, the sun came out, and I did see some temperatures climb up into the low 70s. They've since pulled back a little bit, but they're still in the mid and upper 60s. And that air coming up from the warmer source from the south, where you've got your temperatures and dew points in Maryland and down in Virginia, temperatures that were in the 70s and dew points up in the 60s. Now, of course, a lot of that's been cooled down by the thunderstorms. Notice that out to the west, on the other side of the weather front, our dew points start dropping into the 50s and 40s. We've got another dry air mass that's coming in, which I think we're going to enjoy quite nicely for tomorrow and for Saturday as well. I don't think that the dew points are going to be coming up anytime soon until Saturday night and Sunday, and that's when we'll get into the warmer, more humid air with regards to Father's Day. All right, I'll bring the window back in a moment. I want to go to WPC's rainfall forecast for the next 7 days because it is going to be busy. Frontal boundary is going to be setting up from about New York City northward on average. Through this weekend, the frontal boundary will be to our north. Early next week, after Monday night, Tuesday morning, we're going to see the frontal boundary shift further to the south. It does create an area, a large area that's going to be dealing with downpours, thunderstorms, and heavy rains from eastern Oklahoma, east-northeastward into northern Arkansas, much of Missouri, in through Illinois, Indiana, and you've got some max areas here of 5 inches or more of rain over the next 7 days. Also seeing a rather ample supply of rain for Central and South Florida over the next 7 days. The West is continuing to transition over into its dry season as we head into summer. But with the trough in the east and the continued trough in the east in the longer term, it's going to make for opportunities for downpours and thunderstorms somewhere, and it probably will be enough to create some flooding issues over time. Certainly the areas down in parts of Oklahoma, northwest Arkansas into Missouri have been getting so much rain from the weather pattern that they were in back in the month of May and into the very first part of June. So with the additional rains, the flooding threshold there is probably going to be very, very low. And with respect to, there's not a whole lot going on with warnings. Got some red flag issues down in the southwest, but that is with that dry pattern. That's something that you would normally expect anyway. So let's go back to. Hang on, folks, just having a little bit of difficulty getting organized tonight. Okay, so let's come back to this, and let's take a look at where we're going weather-wise. So first, as far as the surface is concerned, by the way, a few of you have asked about this. I should have mentioned this yesterday. So the GFS is now what was the parallel GFS. The parallel GFS is now the new operational GFS. Supposedly, they got rid of the cold biases that the parallel had and a few other problems, and Tropical Tidbits moved it along. So if you're looking for it, you just click on the GFS. And let me just show you one trick here. If you want to see the GFS, I don't think he has the option. I don't believe he has the option here. Let me see if this is it. Oh, he does. Okay, so unlike the other GFS, the parallel GFS has this option. If you go to precip moisture and click on radar/frozen, you will actually see the model's presentation of what it thinks the radar is supposed to look like. We didn't have that on the old GFS, or if we did, I couldn't find it. If you go to the standard map with the precip, it looks like this, the actual rainfall amounts that are being forecast. But I really like using its view of the radar. It's more than likely to be incorrect, but I still like to use it anyway. So we of course are dealing with this second cold front, and that moves on through here. We are going to see one last arm coming around from that upper trough tomorrow around midday, and you notice that there are some very light echoes being shown in parts of upstate New York and western New England. I think it means that we'll probably have some clouds coming through from mid-morning to mid-afternoon. I think the southern extent of those clouds maybe gets down to about central New Jersey, not further south than that. And of course, this next high is heading very quickly for the South Atlantic coast. So it is immediately setting us up for a warming trend. The core of the coolest air pulls out quickly because the upper trough pulls out quickly, and you get some ridging along the east coast. So that sets up the warmer and eventually more humid conditions. I don't think so much for Saturday. Saturday looks like a very good day. The next frontal boundary is moving through the lakes and back southwestward into Illinois and Missouri, into that low that you see plotted there in northern Texas. That frontal boundary is going to have a tough time getting through here, although Saturday night it does produce showers and thunderstorms from western New York and northwestern Pennsylvania across Ohio, northern Indiana into Illinois, and then back up in through Minnesota. Sunday, I think what you're seeing with the showers there on the radar for Sunday morning, I'm kind of playing that down. I'm not ruling it out, but I'm going to play that down and just go for the idea that Sunday will be a very warm and humid day, and perhaps we'll get into some showers and thunderstorms Sunday night as that boundary shifts southeastward. That frontal boundary, by the way, is going to be weakening, and we're going to wait for a second front that's going to start to fire up here on Monday, and that will produce probably a fairly good chance for thunderstorms later Monday afternoon and on Tuesday. Notice over time that the showers and thunderstorms in the plains, in the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley on Saturday start shifting further south as the frontal boundary shifts southward as we move into Monday night. So now you've got more showers and storms back through parts of Arkansas, eastern Oklahoma, northwest Louisiana, and in through northwestern parts of Kentucky. That frontal boundary is going to get hung up somewhat to our south for much of this week. So I think this opens up opportunities eventually for some more showers and storms. One thing I will tell you is that except for Sunday and Monday, depending on how much cloud cover we have on either of those days, those may be the two opportunities where temperatures could, in some warm spots, get up close to 90. I think we certainly should make it up at least into the middle 80s and maybe some upper 80s. I also think for coastal areas, the sea breezes will be limited to the beaches and not spread that far inland. But the bottom line is that if you're looking for prolonged heat and humidity. I know some people like that steam bath stuff. It's going to be very, very difficult for that to happen given the upper pattern that we're going to have, at least at the moment. Now, we're in mid-June, okay? So I wouldn't read too much into that. If we were in mid-July and we were seeing it, then certainly we could draw some conclusions in terms of how the summer would be going. But it's too early for that. This is a time of year that long-duration heat waves are, in the Northeast anyway, are very rare. Even stringing together 90-degree days back to back to back that's a tough thing to do. You got to have the right pattern. You got to have a strong enough ridge in the east. You got to have a west wind to do it so that you can avoid issues with the wind coming in from off the ocean. You don't really have a setup aloft for that to happen. But going through next week, it's just, there's nothing really extraordinary that I see other than the fact that we have that area that that WPC is indicating to be at risk for heavier rains. And here's a look by next Wednesday night, early Thursday. You've got another low going to the lakes with another cold front approaching the East Coast on Friday the 21st. I think that might be the first day of summer. I'm not sure exactly what the date is this year. But again, if you're looking for heat and humidity lasting for a long, long time, you really can't do it with an upper pattern like this. A very dominant northern part of the jet stream here. Here's our look for today. There's your deep trough. You see where the trough position is here, okay? And then take a look at where it is on, when we look at what's happening on the radar, and you see the rotation. So that translates, this deep trough. And there's probably a low, there's an upper low sitting over Lake Huron, embraced by that dipping height line that comes down from over Michigan and then bottoms out in northeast Ohio and then goes back up into Canada. There's probably a little bit of an upper low in there, and that's your radar is really reflecting that, and the spokes on the radar that are rotating and moving on through. So there's your trough that comes through tomorrow. I mentioned those midday clouds. You see the shortwave trough that is moving through the northeast for Friday, and then that pulls out. You get a little bit of ridging here for the weekend. It tries to push up there off the South Atlantic coast, but you still got more troughing here to deal with in the east. There's an upper low up near Labrador that's rotating and flexing, and going through next week, you're seeing that jet stream coming down, and that's going to put us more on the cooler side of things than on the warmer side of things. And even as you look across the southern part of the United States, the southern extent of the jet stream is pretty far south into the Gulf states and off the southeast coast. You've got westerly winds in the upper atmosphere. So it's even in those areas, you're not going to be able to get it hotter than it otherwise would be on average. You're not seeing some closed upper high and some strong, upper ridge that develops there and just sits there for days and days and days at a time. Now, over time, as we get toward the latter part of the month, there is an upper ridge that flares up and builds in West Texas and New Mexico. You still have troughing here off the East Coast that is going to keep things from getting too hot here. As long as there's some kind of a northwest or westerly flow here in the east, it's, again, heat wave is not going to happen. And in fact, that ridge, if the GFS is right, just let me back it up, it really starts to build it strongly over Texas and New Mexico and Oklahoma toward the end of the month. So your ridge is out near 100 degrees west, and you still have a westerly flow, a northwest flow here in the northeast. So as I said, not going to get a heat wave. If you had that upper high sitting in the east, in the mid-Atlantic states, then it's a whole different ball game. But it looks like the upper high is going to want to build further to the west. Now, this could bring some hot conditions certainly for Texas, for Oklahoma, up into Colorado, to Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas. It may help dry things out over there and finally shut the rain machine off. But for us, it's probably going to mean cold front coming through. You'll get the odd day in between fronts where you will warm up well up into the 80s, but other than that, you're not going to be. Those of you who don't like the hot weather should like this pattern. Okay, here's the tropics. Still very quiet on both sides. Anthony Orr pointed out the other day. I don't think he's on tonight. If you are, Anthony, big hello to you as always. Anthony Orr pointed out the other night that June 17th, if we get to June 17th on the Pacific side with no tropical cyclone development, then looking back at their records, that only has happened 4 other times in the last 50 or so years. So that's pretty unusual to go this far into the month of June on the Pacific side, particularly where we have this weak El Nino. I mentioned yesterday that I would not be at all shocked if we wind up seeing, all of a sudden you'll get 2 or 3 storms form back to back to back. But at the moment, at least, things are pretty quiet. And when we take a look at the tropical satellite loop, nothing's really changed from yesterday. It's just a wind shear parade in the Caribbean. You're seeing clouds. If you look at the detail in this loop, you can see the higher cloud tops moving in one direction, the lower cloud tops moving in one direction, the higher cloud tops moving in the opposite direction. So as you go higher into the atmosphere, you've got strong westerly winds pretty much across all of the Caribbean, eastward out into the tropical and subtropical Atlantic. There really isn't room here for anything to develop. The old frontal boundary is active, producing those showers and storms in Florida, so you do have disturbed weather that's frontal related. That is the old cold front that moved pretty far to the south, and you'll notice the skies are really fairly clear across much of Mississippi and Alabama to Louisiana. So that push, once you get into this part of June, and you don't see cold fronts making it that far south too often, that push has moved out into the Gulf of Mexico. Sometimes, you can get tropical systems develop from old frontal boundaries that gradually decay, and then the atmosphere warms under certain conditions. You can see tropical systems develop in situations like this, but there's no indication of that happening at the moment, and I didn't really see any hints of that happening on models today. But if you have to watch something, I suppose we could just keep our eyes on that old frontal boundary that is in the eastern part of the Gulf of Mexico. All right, so let me come full screen here. Let me just also tell you guys right now that tomorrow night, being that the weather is the way it is going into this weekend, it does look relatively tame for the most part. I'm going to just take a bit of a breather. So tomorrow night there won't be a long live stream, and there probably won't be long live streams over the weekend. I will have the weather in 5 in the morning on all 3 days. Just won't be doing the long live stream. I got to take a break every once in a while. So I look for these opportunities where the weather calms down, because once hurricane season revs up, the breaks become harder and harder for me to take. So I'm going to take advantage of it when the opportunity presents itself. And being that this is Father's Day weekend, I think it's a good time for me to do that. Chuck Cardillo, do I think that tropical storms will form closer to the southeast coast this year? Well, you certainly don't want to see, if you're looking for tropical storm development, seeing those westerly winds in the upper atmosphere as far south as they are would not be conducive really to storm development off the southeast coast. So, but that's now. I don't know what the pattern's going to look like down the road, and I have to tell you that honestly, it's kind of a reach for me to just kind of go out there and try to figure out, is this going to be a year where it's more for the Atlantic side, or is it going to be another year for the Gulf of Mexico or for the Caribbean? One thing I will say is let the first few storms form and see where those go, because oftentimes they set the table for tropical systems. Now, we did already have Andrea back in mid-May, and that formed between the Bahamas and Bermuda. I would regard that as an anomaly at this point. I really just would rather wait to see what storms we see develop inside the context of the normal hurricane season. Let's see what the first couple of them, where they form, because oftentimes when you look in the past, there is a rhyme to it. History never repeats itself exactly, but it does rhyme. So let's see if we can find that rhyming down the road. But I don't know whether it's a good thing to start speculating at this point. The upper high where it is, if the models are correct, would probably not favor much happening in the Gulf of Mexico. I like to see the upper high across the Gulf states, inland of the Gulf states, where you get lower than normal pressures in the Gulf of Mexico, but particularly down in the Caribbean. I'm not so sure whether that pattern would be what we're seeing the model produce in terms of where it wants to put the upper high later in the month and toward the end of the month, whether that would be really conducive to development in the Gulf or in the Caribbean. I mean, obviously there are also other factors at play. That's not the only factor. But like I said, I like to see, when I'm looking for something to form in the Gulf or in the Caribbean, I like to see that high up far enough north so you get lower than normal pressures down in the south. Steely Dan, farmers gave up on planting corn and soybeans in here in Michigan. They can't get into the fields. It's all mud. Yes, and I was talking to somebody about this with regards to planting corn. One of the critical things about corn is that there is a short window where if you've ever driven by cornfields, you might be amazed at the fact that you may go by there at the beginning of, I know I've seen this happen, when you go by them in July, and they look really, really small. And then all of a sudden, almost overnight, they grow to these stalks that are, 6 feet or higher. There is a short window. The corn has to be planted by a certain time in order for the corn to achieve a certain height and then catch that period of maximum sunshine and growth, that maximum growth period. If that window is missed, the whole crop is missed. And this, you're going to see ramifications of that in prices, in commodities prices for corn and soybeans, as we, and some of it may already be priced. I haven't really been looking at what the commodity markets are pricing. There are other pressures, of course, but in terms of a weather-related move, we may see higher prices down the road for corn and soybeans, and of course that translates into beef prices, et cetera, et cetera. It all there's a chain reaction to all of this stuff. Raider 19er, the rain killing farmers here in Northwest Ohio. Plus, we've only had 8 80-degree days this year. That is, again, as I said, that is a big issue. You got to get those. Corn, I believe, loves it when it gets really, really warm. So it can get that big growth spurt, and the way the pattern is, it's cool, and particularly here in the Northeast, you get an onshore flow in the Northeast in June, and you're dealing with temperatures in the 50s. The average high 80. Only got to some places today, barely made it to 60. That's 20 degrees under where we're supposed to be. And Scott Briller pointing out too here in. If you go back in the past springs, we have seen 90-degree temperatures in April pop up, in May, certainly, and of course in June. But not so this year. We haven't seen it yet. And the first 90-degree day, pointing out the first 90-degree day, no summer like the latest first 90-degree day, the chairman says, was on July 26, 1877, going that far. And by the way, we have had years here, at least in the New York City area, measured by Central Park. We've had years where 90 degrees was not reached during the summer months or during that summer season. And oftentimes those summers are characterized by summers that you have high humidity and lots of days where the wind is coming in from off the ocean, be it northeast or east or southeast or even south-southeast. With the summers where you have a prevailing southerly wind or a prevailing south or southeast wind for much of the time, that's going to keep temperatures from getting above 90 even, and that impacts areas further inland as well. I'm going to give a quick check to the latest radars. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything as far as severe weather is concerned. So let's take a look. And yeah, nothing seems to be going on now in Jersey with that area that came out of Maryland. And just taking... Well, we do actually have a severe thunderstorm warning that has just gone up. That is that a severe thunderstorm, or is that... I got to double check. Hold on, before I speak incorrectly. Hang on one second. See what they put up here. Oh, I do stand corrected. They just put up a flash flood warning for a small area in southeastern Pennsylvania and parts of northern Delaware. So they went for Newcastle County in northern Delaware, southeastern Chester County in southeastern PA, and Delaware County in southeastern Pennsylvania. So that's coming out of those showers and storms that move through Maryland, and that area is holding together, but it's probably not nearly as strong as what it was an hour or so ago. So rain has become the front and center issue at the moment. Javon Perry up in Boston, and you didn't get out of the 50s today. That is not good. Robert Brown, great farmers markets here in North Carolina and Virginia. I'm not too familiar with the conditions. The conditions that we've seen in Virginia and North Carolina. I mean, those states are always, usually they're wet most of the time. So I'm thinking, I haven't heard anything negative from about what's going on with farming conditions down there. But you're saying it's good, so we'll go with that, Robert. And make sure you post a picture of your dog, by the way, when you get back. Lisa Nieves, going out further east to get corn. Usually you go out east for fresh vegetables. This year I'm going to try and grow fresh veggies. Nothing like growing them at home. I've done that for years. Of course, homegrown tomatoes, zucchini. I loved doing zucchini. And as everybody knows, when you grow it at home versus when you buy it from the commercial grocers, they don't have that taste. They don't have that flavor. I remember growing broccoli many years ago, and the florets, they tasted like somebody had poured sugar on them. They were so sweet. You don't get that when you buy broccoli in the store. They taste like cardboard. Ryan Kopp, the old farmer saying West New York regarding corn is knee-high by the 4th of July. Yep. Again, going back to that window of opportunity, it has to get into the ground to get that maximum growth spurt. Zucchini, Ruru, is now. Just make sure you there's zucchini, and then there's the cucuts, which is a big Italian thing, and those grow into these sort of long baseball bat size fruits or vegetables. I don't remember. Zucchini's either a fruit or a vegetable. I forgot what I think it might be a fruit technically. But the bottom line is you want to make sure you get zucchini, and the flowers are edible. We actually, it's a long-standing thing in my family. We would pick the flowers off the zucchini, dip them in egg and flour, and then deep fry them. delicious. Fried zucchini flowers are great if you haven't had them. Also, zucchini, you need the male, and there's the male and the female. You need both, and they cross pollinate. You don't have to do anything. The bees and the bugs take care of that for you, and so does the wind. But there's the male and the female flower, and usually you try to pick the male flower, and this way you fry those up, and the female flowers will produce, of course, the zucchini itself. And when you grow them at home, absolutely delicious. And try not to let them get too big. Oh, it's a gourd. Thank you. Thanks, David. You're right. Try not to let them grow too big, because the bigger they grow, they start producing seeds, and then you got to kind of wade through that. But if you pick them when they're smaller, before they produce seeds, they are absolutely delicious. So Ruru, I just roll back a few minutes from a minute or two from here. We did the whole spiel about zucchini. Jason Schaefer, nice to see you. Eggplants are good too. So go ahead, get working. Everybody get working on your gardens. All right, it's time for me to go, folks. Have a great night. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. So look for Weather in 5 over the next 3 days. If something were to happen that required me to jump on for a long live stream, I'd find a way. But I can tell you right now, Saturday definitely won't happen. Sunday won't happen because of I'll be at WPIX TV Sunday afternoon and evening, so there'll be website posts and other stuff, but won't be able to do that. But the Weather in 5 will be on tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday. All right, have a great evening, and we'll see you. We'll see you on the long show, probably back next Monday, and on the short show, just write in the comments if you got any questions. Patreon members, you can always message me, and we've got. We got chat capability now, so I will occasionally open up the chat board for everybody on Patreon so that we can all, get involved into a good weather conversation. Good night, everybody.